Crispin Rea is the newly elected city councilman representing the 4th District of the Greater Kansas City area. He is the first Latino to hold that seat in 30 years. Crispin is a humble family man who has goals on improving our great city every single day. This is Enterrupt KC, baby. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Enterrupt KC. This is a podcast where we dedicate ourselves to talking to people, places, and things in Kansas City. Sir. I'm your man, D-Rod. This is JL.
Yes, sir.
What's going on, JL? How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing. It's been a busy week.
It has.
I feel like the topic of today is the Chiefs. But we ain't going to talk about that. That's not really what we're specifically talking about today.
We'll talk about that when the cameras are not rolling, man. There's more important things to talk about right now. And even more importantly, man, we got a good one today, man. We got a good one today.
We got an excellent show today.
Yes, sir.
Really excited, really excited for Kansas City because this is one of Kansas City's own people, one of his own sons. So let me introduce the man himself, the one, the only, Mr. Crispin Rea, man. How you doing, Crispin?
Man? Or good afternoon. How are you?
Good morning.
Hey,
good.
It's still morning in some place in the world.
Someplace, man.
How you doing, man?
Good. Glad to be here. Appreciate the invitation. Looking forward to talking.
Yeah, man. We appreciate you being here on Enterrupt KC with us, Crispin. How's that new year treating you, man? It's a new year, fresh start. You know, it's kind of the mindset, right? How's the new year treating you?
Yeah, it's been good. It was kind of a slow start to the year. Mm-hmm. The cold and the ice shut things down for about a week. It felt like we were all kind of holed up in our homes. Right. And the week before that, I was down with COVID.
Wow. Man.
And so stuck.
So you got sick too, huh?
Yeah. So I was stuck at home stuck in a bedroom at home for a whole week. But we're up and rolling now. It was a slow start.
Did that hit you kind of hard?
Not as bad as I thought. I had one day of kind of intense
feeling
symptoms.
crap.
Yeah, and then I started feeling a lot better after that. And so more so it was, they recommend a 5-day period from when you test positive, and we've got a 10-month-old. So, 3 of those days, I was upstairs in the bedroom just feeling good, but
being restless, man. Being restless, I'm sure.
Did you write a book in those 3 days, or what'd you do, man?
I read a lot. That was one of those weekends was playoffs, and so
there you go.
I watched a couple games and just hung out and relaxed.
You kind of probably got to remember what it was to be was and living the single life again. Is that what it was like?
Kind of. Eating in bed and
leaving a mess in there.
Leaving a mess, and
there you go. There you go, man. There you go. No, I mean, listen, man. Same thing. We were really building up to release and kind of get this whole thing started right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
With Enterrupt KC, and I got sick.
Yeah.
I got real sick too. And then, just like one thing at the weather, and da-da-da.
A couple little minor setbacks, you know, but it's all good.
But here we are, man. Here we are, to your point, man. Just get up, keep things rolling, right? Crispin, man, one of the things that I try to do with somebody like you is I try to imagine what your day-to-day is like. I can't imagine, to be honest with you, man. But I'm curious, man, what is your day-to-day like? Because you have got to be one of the busiest people around town right now.
The important thing for me to managing all that is having a routine.
Right.
And you don't stick to it every day, but you try to. And when you do, you feel good. When you don't, you stick to it the next day.
For sure. For sure.
I usually get up around 5:45, 5:30, hit the gym real quick before my wife and the baby wake up.
There you go.
They're usually up by the time I get back. So, she gets ready for work. I start getting ready, hang out with the baby, and then I drop him off at daycare, which is just a couple blocks down the street from City Hall. So get some cool time with him in the morning.
That's right.
And then I roll into the office usually between 8:30, 9 o'clock. The schedule does vary from day to day. Wednesdays and Thursdays are usually the busy days, and the week kind of revolves around those days because that's when the council subcommittee meetings, and I guess I should mention I'm a city council member elected back in August.
There you go.
Or took office back in August for 4th District.
First Latino city council member in 30 years. Is
30
that
years, man.
Yeah, almost 30 years.
We gotta
applaud that, man. Clap.
You know, I don't know. Do we wave, bow? You know, we got to do something, man.
We should do a shot.
We could
do a shot,
right.
man.
I'm gonna sip, but
we're sipping, man. This is
sip.
sippers, right? So salute to that, man. Right? Over 30 years.
Absolutely. Go ahead, man.
So Wednesdays and Thursdays are pretty busy with the committee meetings and then the council legislative session. But aside from that, you know, it's a lot of meetings with staff, meetings with community folks, developers, folks who have business with the city, folks who are trying to push a program or a policy or address an issue. A lot of it's community engagement, interaction, going to community meetings with business groups and neighborhood associations. And then I do try and carve out, you know, a significant amount of time for myself to read and research and understand things that are coming up at the city level. And, you know, I want to keep myself well informed. And so, you know, it varies from day to day, but it's a lot of meeting throughout the day. And then sometimes, so I pick up the baby at the end of the day from daycare. And then sometimes there's meetings in the evenings, you know, a lot of neighborhood association meetings and group meetings happen at that time. But I try and keep that pretty limited to a couple nights a week. I could very easily be out all 7 nights. But
I could imagine.
You know, there's been a couple times where I've going straight from work to a meeting and don't even get to see, you know, my baby boy before he goes to bed. And I never feel good those nights. And so I try and keep that to a bare minimum.
Yeah, for sure.
I hear you, man. You know, and I don't know what that daily grind is like. I don't think I'll ever know. Respect to you for doing it for the community, for your district, right? Being that I was in school for, I don't know, 50 years, it felt like of my life, you know, as an adult, working adult, I can relate to the fact of going home. You don't see your kids, you know, you go straight from work to school several nights a week, you know, and you know, I was sitting there trying to get my bachelor's as a grown adult. Then I went and got my master's for some reason. I'm not really sure. So I can relate on that, brother.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, one of the things, man, that, you know, you had mentioned you're a city councilman, Crispin. I think it's important for people to understand the difference between your work as a city councilman versus your work as a Jackson County prosecutor, because I think that's how a lot of people got to know you. And then, of course, your work as a school board member, right? So what would you say is the biggest difference between those? Because in my mind, when I hear those things, you've been involved and engaged in the community in Kansas City for years. What is the biggest difference for you today versus those roles?
Yeah, it's been a big difference between, you know, being a council member now and then prior to that, prior to July, having been a prosecutor for 8 years. You know, 6 of those years I was in the special victims unit, so I was prosecuting, you know, really awful things. Special victims involve, you know, physical, sexual abuse against women, against children, a lot of domestic violence. And so these were very, very difficult and intense cases. You know, a lot of folks don't like to plead guilty to that kind of stuff. So
sure they don't.
Usually having to go to trial, and you know, when you've got a child victim or a woman who's experiencing trauma, you know, that stuff gets pretty heavy. And so, you know, that was a long 8 years. You know, I think it was long overdue for me to move on from the office, not because I was burnt out or anything like that. I just, there's a pretty high turnover rate in that unit, in the special victims unit, because that stuff is really heavy.
Well, it's a lot to take on and a lot to see. I mean, I can only imagine, you know, the stories and everything that you had to deal with.
Images, I mean, you're seeing it all. I'm sure.
Yeah. Really, really awful stuff. And so, you know, it's been from kind of quality of life perspective, it's been a big change. You know, as a council member, I have complete control of my schedule, whereas as a prosecutor, at any point in the year, I had my entire year ahead of me scheduled out with trials, you know, multiple times a month. And, you know, my wife would want to go visit her family in California, and I'd have to say, well, I can't. I got a trial scheduled that next week. And so, you know, the level of stress is different. It's more manageable. and I'm just in more control, right now. And so that's been really nice. That was probably the most difficult job I'll ever have, but it was incredibly fulfilling getting a good result for someone.
Man, Crispin, don't sell yourself short, man. I mean, you're a councilman. You're still in your 30s, right? I mean, hey,
that's a lot. That's a lot.
I was gonna say it when you were going. The reason why it was time for you to move on is because, man, you're a freaking asteroid floating out in the universe, man. You're not even a shooting star, man. I mean,
you're out there roaming around, right?
Seriously, man. I mean, but I think, I appreciate you sharing that, man, because, I think there's a lot of people just still learning about how communities work and how they function, right? What do elected officials do versus just bureaucrats, right? How does that really work? And I guess a follow-up to that, Crispin, would be school board member. I saw that you were a caseworker, right, for No Violence Alliance. Of course, Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. I'm curious, man. Could you share with us which one of those roles do you feel prepared you most for what you're doing today?
That's a good question. I don't think I could pick one of them that did. More so, serving on the school board has given me a lot of insight into serving on city council. One of the situation I came into, and this was 2010 when I was elected, was that the district was dysfunctional from its governance perspective. Hadn't been a good relationship between a superintendent and school board, and it had just been kind of mired in chaos for a long time. And so, I learned a lot about the value of collaboration and working together, and having a good professional working relationship with folks on the staff side, superintendent and deputy superintendents, and that's been something I've been able to carry over as a city council member.
Right.
You can hold staff accountable and set expectations, but still have strong, good professional relationships.
There you go.
And I think sometimes elected folks just come in hot and just want to make an example,
right? And trying to take over everything and with full throttle
and you probably experienced this, in your positions where sometimes you get a council
once or twice, maybe. Who knows?
And so, I remember there was a point. I also worked in the mayor's office before I was on the school board, and part of my job just was to attend the council meetings, and I remember at the time there were a couple council members. I won't name any names, but these folks would rail on staff, and they were just disrespectful and demeaning and not professional. And these are the folks that have gone to get the degrees and the education to be experts in their field, whether it's city management or water or sidewalks. And the unelected or the elected non-experts are just being disrespectful to these folks. And I remember seeing that, and I thought, if I were ever to be elected, I would never be one of those folks. It just was not a good look, and that's not how you treat people. So, from those positions, definitely brought a lot over from the prosecutor's office.
Right.
Having, no one has to make tough decisions like a judge.
Yeah.
When you're in trial, when you're making rulings, when you are deciding, sentencing and all these really important things, the judge's role is to sit there and hear the argument from the prosecutor, hear the argument from the defense attorney, weigh all the evidence and make a decision within the bounds of the law.
Right.
And, having observed judges make those decisions for 8 years, it's given me a really good sense of how to make tough decisions. And I kind of model it off of that, where I hear multiple sides out and, kind of weigh the things that are important and decide and stay comfortable with that decision.
Absolutely, man. What would you say? I mean, I've gotten to know you a little bit right over the years, and I've never seen Crispin angry. I'm not saying others watching this have never seen Crispin angry.
You've probably never been in a courtroom with him, though, man.
That's true. and hopefully man. I will never be in a courtroom with Crispin Rea. But I guess what are those things that you would say, man, listen, I'm extremely passionate about these topics. What are those things for you?
As it relates to the city council, the homicide rate and public safety is a big issue.
That's a big one, man.
That was the one of the most important things that I highlighted during the election. I said it all throughout last year that we're on track to have our deadliest year in Kansas City history.
And we did. We did.
182 homicides, I think.
Yeah, 183 or something.
182. Yeah, 183, 182, somewhere in there. There might be that. The number could go up because crimes get solved down the road when homicide happened in the past. But point is, it's not going down. I mean, we broke the record.
Yeah, unfortunately, man.
Yeah, and that was an issue that was very personal to me. The victims and the defendants and suspects in those cases are black and brown folks of color. Yeah. I grew up in a neighborhood with a very high rate of violence, and so knowing folks who've experienced that, being around it, was a very personal issue for me. And as a city, I mean, it's important. You don't have to live in a rough neighborhood to understand why we shouldn't have a high homicide rate. You take it to another kind of more superficial level. We've got the World Cup coming in 2026. If you Google Kansas City out of World Cup cities, we're going to have the highest homicide rate, and so we can't have thousands of folks coming from Europe and other parts of the world to a city that is that dangerous. And so we've got a lot of work to do.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. That public safety thing that you brought up, right? I mean, and you said that touches everybody, man. I know it touches me and my family. Everybody, so that public safety is a big deal, with that being like dealing with the police department and everything that you do, right?
Yeah, I think, the traditional definition of public safety is law enforcement. Right. What are police doing? What are not police doing? But
which is such a rare. I mean, nowadays, man. Unfortunately, I mean, there's a real good apples and then there's the bad apples. But I think the last 5 years, man, the police department, law enforcement have begun a really bad rap. But trying to rebuild that relationship with communities and trying to establish that they're here for a good reason. Everybody gets in trouble. Something that happens, you're always going to call the police department, and they're going to depend on them to come and help, but that's a struggle that a lot of people have.
Yeah, and it's complex. Right. When I talk about public safety, I mean in the traditional sense of what the police do and what they don't do, but I also mean, if you're, a young black man pulled over for a taillight, you're safe in your encounter with the police. You're safe from the police as well. Yeah. And so, what we do in kind of this criminal justice realm, I think we got to redefine what public safety means. It doesn't mean just how law enforcement responds. I think it means, what we do in terms of providing, diversionary services and alternatives to incarceration, and what we're doing with programming to keep folks. I mean, as a prosecutor, I put a lot of dangerous folks in prison for a long period of time, and it should, in every situation, have been the last resort. There should be so many things that happen in the community and in the system before someone gets to that point. And when we talk about public safety and criminal justice at the city level, the conversation needs to be about incarceration being the absolute last resort after we've exhausted every other opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You talked about your childhood growing up in a tough environment, tough neighborhoods, right? What I do know about you is that you're from the east side of Kansas City. So what neighborhood are you from, man?
So it's a Blue Valley area, Truman Road, Topping, 23rd Street, Hilltop East High School, kind of that whole area in there. Yeah. Growing up, it was pretty diverse. I mean, it was split pretty well between black and brown folks. Sure. And experienced a lot of challenges, but that's the neighborhood I'm from.
Yeah, what high school did you go to?
So when I was in high school, East High School was actually closed.
Okay.
And all the kids from the area went out to, I think Van Horn was part of the district at the time. Yeah. I had gone to St. Stephen's Academy over in Northeast, over on like 10th and Bennington. Yeah. And so, when it was time for high school, my parents sent me to St. Mary's out in Independence, a little further out. And, there was probably, about 30 or 40 of us from the Northeast that went out to St. Mary's. I mean, there's a whole bus route just to come and pick us all up.
Yeah.
And so
why is that?
I think, if you look at the Catholic schools in the area, it was Holy Cross, it was St.
Sure.
Stephen's, and you tended to either go to St. Pius or to St. Mary's.
Okay.
And so,
got you.
if you were, and now Cristo Rey wasn't around at the time.
Right.
I think all those students go to Cristo
Yeah,
Rey now.
shout out Crispin Rea.
Yeah. But at the time, a big group of us went out to St. Mary's, and it was interesting because, St. Mary's was a little more diverse than you would expect, because you had the Hispanic kids and a couple African kids kind of sprinkled in there coming from the Northeast.
Sure.
You had not African American, but African,
some from the country.
folks who I
Some
knew
Somalians and stuff like that.
right? Sudanese. And then you had the blue collar kids from Independence and Sugar Creek, and then you had the more well off kids from Blue Springs and some of those areas. And so, everyone kind of came in at different socioeconomic
mixing
levels.
pot, man, mixing pot.
Yeah, but everyone got along. I mean, it was a small
bowl
school.
of gumbo, man.
I didn't realize, people actually had swimming pools in the backyard until I made friends with, the
There
kids
you
in
go.
Blue Springs, and I remember seeing that the first time, thinking, this is great.
So if I would have met you as a kid and I was like, hey, what's up, Crispin? My name's, JL, you would have been like, you got a swimming pool?
We did have a swimming pool at our place,
We
too.
did, but it was...
You're from Blue Springs?
No, I'm not from Blue Springs.
Oh, okay.
I'm from Rosedale, man, KCK. But what D-Rod's talking about is at his mom's house.
Yeah.
There was it was really a horse feed is what it was, right?
Yeah. My
who
dad,
didn't
man.
swim in a horse feed, man?
My dad went and got one of them big old round steel.
The big tubs.
Yeah, big tub, man. I don't know where he got it, how he got it, but he got one. And that was our pool, man.
That was North Kansas City swimming pool to us.
Yeah,
man.
man. Hey, we go over there, run,
we
swim
made
circles,
it the wave
man.
pool and everything. But Crispin, one of the things I think people would be curious about, and I certainly am.
Oh yeah.
Your childhood, man, your family. Do you have brothers and sisters? You grew up in a home. I read, your mother and your father, were present. Talk about that a little bit. Did you have siblings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have 2 older sisters.
Okay.
So I was the baby of the family. My sisters are 6 and 9 years older than me, so there was a pretty good gap.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
They were
So
more...
you had 3 moms.
Exactly what I was about to
Man,
say.
they looked after you tough, man. I'm sure they looked after you tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And still do. Still got to deal with that.
yeah.
But
I'm sure we all do, man.
No, we were always very tight knit. My dad's side and my mom's side are all from the West Side. They both grew up on the West Side, so we had a big group of cousins and family on the West Side, and then kind of a smaller group over near us on the East Side.
Sure.
So we went back and forth a lot. But my mom was a site coordinator with Link, the after-school programming in the public schools, and so they would provide after-school services and social services for other low-income families.
Right.
And so she was also very involved with the neighborhood association, and that's kind of how I got exposed to folks trying to improve and clean and make their neighborhood safer. She would take me to those meetings with her sometimes, and I on one hand would trying to look tough for my friends, but then she's got me out there walking up and down the street picking up trash. And then my dad was he was a union guy for 36 years. Nice. He worked at the post office at the bulk mail center over here in Kansas. Drove a forklift for 36 years, and it was
down in Argentina.
Or is that? Are you talking about the one post office that used to be the main one down there on Pershing or something?
No. It's the big bulk mail center over in KCK. Down by the Gamble's Food. And it was the benefits and salary and security that came with his union job that really was the game changer for us.
100%,
that allowed us to stay in the house we lived in and have benefits and health care, all because of him working hard and having that job. So we it was tough, but we always had enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes you fill the pot up with a little more water. I mean, we never went on fancy vacations or anything like that, but, we always had food and a roof over our heads.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, with that being said, about what time do you think in your teenage years did you decide what you wanted to do, and how did you want to go about that, Was there somebody who, besides your parents or anybody else, that kind of, that you looked up to and, was a mentor or something like that?
Yeah, I was always smart in school, but I never applied myself, so I was always kind of a mediocre student, all through high school. I mean, I knew I was smart. I knew I knew things, and I just,
just
kind
of
how boys are.
Man, I know, man.
You're too cool.
Listen, I'm raising my hand on that one. I was exact same way.
I was wondering about that when you were talking about, the difference between, you're trying to be cool with your friends, but then your parents. I mean, listen, man, I know my mom, man, she had us in church three days a week, and then here's my friends like, hey, man, let's go play basketball at the park, I'm like, man, I can't. It's Wednesday night. I got to go to church, So I can relate, brother. I can relate.
I had good people, always had good teachers that stand out. But, when coming out of high school, so I ran cross country and track in high school, and we went to state championships and things like that. But I wasn't really planning on going to college until I got a recruitment letter from a coach at Park University up there. And so, my mom was really happy about that, because she was disappointed that I wasn't like making plans to go to college,
further education, do any of that.
Yeah. So, when I got to college, my first semester, I got, complete straight A's across the board. And I think it was because I started, I got to pick my classes, and I was learning things that I was choosing to learn that I wanted to learn.
Right.
And, it was the first time I had actually really applied myself. And I remember thinking my first semester, well, maybe that's a fluke. And then I did it again, and I thought, wow, I'm really onto something here. And so, I really latched on to some of the professors up there who were really good.
Right.
And, it was the first time I really, gave myself a chance to see my own potential, and so that was kind of my evolution out of high school.
Did it help you feel like, because I feel like for a lot of urban, youth who grew up in maybe the environments we grew up in, right?
Yeah.
Once they kind of get out of that environment and they're kind of in a different world, per se, it's like, oh,
a light comes on or something,
I can be a little different now, or be who I maybe really am, right? Did you feel that way?
I mean, it was yes and no. I felt like I had time, and all I had to do was study and focus on that, which I didn't really have before. And some of the influences you have in your life aren't always positive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't want to let go of who I was or where I was from.
That's
so,
right.
I was up there getting these good grades, but walking around campus in my Dickies and my head shaved and
man,
giant oversized polo.
Hey, man, let me tell you something, man. When I was Googling Crispin, I'm sure just like you, right? Like, because, we did a couple Google searches on you, Crispin. I'm like, okay, where'd the beard come from? Because... man, Crispin looks like he's 15 years younger without the beard, and you just, your appearance, right, it just has changed over time.
Keep that beard, man. That beard's rocking,
it's still you, brother. You're still you.
Yeah.
You were talking about how you went to Park University on athletic scholarship for cross country, I'm assuming?
Cross country and track.
Yeah.
Wow, man. So what did you compete in? I mean, what were the distances or what have you?
So cross country at the college level is... well, in high school you run a 5K. In college it's a 8K, and then in track I ran mostly middle distance, but my primary race was a 10K, which is 25 laps or so on the track.
Wow.
It's a pretty long distance on the track, but my third year, we made it to national championships, and so nice. I got to run a national championship in Louisville, Kentucky.
How'd you do there?
I did all right.
Yeah,
I did all right. I mean, the thing about NAIA, because Park University's NAIA, cross country track, all their sports is, at the time there was no age limitation on athletes. The NCAA there were.
Okay.
Right.
And so what you got, especially in cross country and track, was, a lot of guys, well, a lot of men and women from countries with really strong running cultures, like Sudan, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And you'd get folks that were in their late 20s that had been running for years and coming to get an American education. And so schools like Park and others would recruit these folks that were just phenomenal athletes and runners.
They get it too, man.
Yeah, and so we're going to these meets in Arkansas and Oklahoma State and running against all these Big 12 schools in Arkansas and competing with them because we've got all these amazing athletes. It was all right. I was all right. I went in a little banged up. I was having a lot of knee injuries, and we did okay.
So you're pretty athletic. I mean, even like you said, you wake up in the morning time and get up and you go work.
Still running the 10K on the treadmill in the morning?
Man,
no, I don't run.
What's your sport? What's your sport? Do you play any sports?
No, before the pandemic, I was training. I was boxing.
Nice.
And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. I mean, I grew up a huge boxing fan.
Right.
Always just been a big boxing guy. And so I haven't quite picked that back up. So mostly just working out, lifting weights and stuff like that in the gym.
Right. Boxing's a great one, man. I'm a boxing fan as well, man. There's a boxer. I even wrote it down, man, because I wanted to talk about it. His name is Willie Pep. You ever hear Willie Pep, man? He boxed in the 30s, man. And his record is 229 11 losses.
That's illegal.
This was a given time, right? I mean, at the time, I think it was in the 30s, man. Because I looked up like boxers and famous boxers and the records, more importantly, back then, man. 229.
Who's your favorite boxers, man?
Oh, I mean Canelo Alvarez, of course. I mean,
Canelo,
What about Ryan Garcia? You a Garcia fan?
I was at first, but I think he's a little more into the social media and influencer lifestyle. I thought he had a lot of potential, but
Tank exposed him, man.
Yeah. Tank is a beast, but definitely Canelo. I mean, he's the Mexican legend of our time.
That's right.
Yeah, he is.
That's right, man.
He is.
That's what's up, man. I wanted to get your thoughts on resources for college, Crispin, because one of the things that I think our youth today, and I'm sure just when we were growing up, right, going to college in my household, it was like an expectation. Like my dad was like, "You're going to go to college. You're going to go to college. You're too smart," type of thing. And then I, smartly, I had a kid in high school, and it was like, "Oh, you're not going to college anymore. Now you're going to work," right? But I think one of the things that I'd like to hear from you is what type of resources did you have around you, or were there resources for you to go to college as a young Latino kid from, urban Kansas City? What was out there for you?
Yeah, it didn't feel like a lot. Neither one of my parents had gone to college. I was the first in my family to step foot on a college campus. And so, there wasn't, there weren't folks around me who knew where to apply for the scholarships or do anything like that. I mean, the athletic scholarship was a great resource, and that paid for a big chunk of it, but not all of it.
Right.
And so, we went the student loan route, and honestly, like I said, my high school grades weren't anywhere near good enough to get me any kind of good
scholarships, no rides.
And so, I remember sitting in the office with my mom and the financial advisor, going through all the loan stuff, and like neither one of us had any idea what we were signing on to or talking about. But the loans can be a burden, and certainly I carry a lot of that over from law school. But we always when my wife and I talk about managing all that, we always try and look at it as we get to pay those things off, not we have to pay them off. We get to pay them off in the sense that we got them, but we have careers that allow us to pay them off.
That's right.
And so, I always try and keep that in mind. We get to pay those off, although it's quite a bit. But
sure.
So
hey, salute to that, man, because I'm right there with you, brother. I'm right there with you, man.
Right on, man.
But the resources were there, and I certainly, having gone out of college and gotten more involved, all the incredible organizations like Hispanic Scholarship Fund and LULAC. There's all these organizations that do provide the resources.
Right.
I wasn't connecting to them
right.
at the time.
Right.
But that's one of those things. There's a lot of things I always feel like I've learned the hard way, and so I always try and pass that knowledge on to folks.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. And that's one of the things I feel like even today is probably a big difference, right, from when we were growing up, graduating in high school to today is, a lot of us have learned, to your point, to pay back, right, to give back to our community. And now we're fully engaged in the young Crispins and where they are, and the young JLs and the young D-Rods, right, where they are, where they're going to school, educating them on their resources, educating them on their resources.
There's a lot out there, man.
There's a lot out there.
Yeah,
a lot of good
now.
programs, of good programs out there.
Yeah.
So you have a bachelor's, a master's, and then you went on to get your Juris Doctorate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you did the last two at UMKC, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. At what point, I think, getting that much college education, it seems like you're focused and you're determined on a goal. What was your goal when you're going to school? Like, I know bachelor's, you were probably like, I'm just going to go, it sounds like. But then to go get a master's degrees are like pointed, right? Like specific. And then you go get your Juris Doctorate, which means you're going to go be an attorney. So what point did you figure out, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do with this education?
Probably back in undergrad, I knew I wanted to be in public service, and I knew I wanted to be in a policy-making position, which is usually going to be something elected. When I was on the school board, there were a couple board members who were attorneys, and I observed how much they had to contribute to the conversations by having formal legal training and understanding how things interact with the Constitution and so on and so forth. And so I wanted to be equipped with the law degree. At that time, I wasn't necessarily thinking about being a prosecutor. That changed at a different point. But I always knew I wanted to do something on the public service side and policymaking side. And so, a master's was important to that. It was a master's in public administration. And, I wanted to get that degree. And then UMKC actually offers a JD MPA program where you can transfer some of your credits back and forth from both programs. So if you just stacked them, that's a 2 and a 3 year program, so 5 years total. But I think you save a semester or two if you do the joint program, and you do the MPA stuff first, and then you go into the JD program. But I think I have that backwards. They want you to do the JD first and then get the MPA. I did it backwards, but they still let me cross my credits over. So, it was kind of a package deal for me to get the background in governance, but also in the law.
Right.
That's awesome, man. I want to back up a little bit also, Crispin. You talked about your father being a union worker and being a forklift for the Postal Service. I read about you that you, to this day, you still pay into the union, the International Association of Firefighters, right? Local 42.
Yeah.
Man, that's a great thing. Obviously, you was never... how'd you come about getting that?
I was never a firefighter.
That's a great thing, though. I support union workers by all means, man.
So the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office is actually unionized. They unionized back in, I think, the 90s, and they became members of the Firefighters Union Local 42.
Oh, okay.
And so for 8 years as a prosecutor, I was a dues-paying member of Local 42.
Okay.
And then I'm not a prosecutor anymore, but I decided to stay in the union and continue to pay in.
Your dues.
And union membership, should be kind of like the Marine Corps. Once you're a member, you're always a member.
Always,
You're always should be. And so, I'm still a dues-paying member of Local 42.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's excellent, man. What would you say, Crispin? We talked about you being, the first Latino, councilman here in 30 years in Kansas City, Missouri. Getting the support of Latinos, do you feel like there was any obstacles for you getting the support of Latinos in the community?
No, fortunately not. And I did not think that was going to be the case. We've got some fairly recent examples of other Latinos who ran for city council and have not had the full embrace of the community.
Right.
You know, we are very, very fractured as a community, and we always have been, between agencies, between families, between parts of the West Side.
It's a tight knit, man. It's a very tight group.
Yeah, I mean, when folks just for things that we've probably all forgotten about, don't get along.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's resulted in a string of Latinos running for office that haven't had the full support of the community.
Yeah.
And it's the crabs in the bucket story. We're all trying to get out, but we're pulling each other back down. You know.
Yeah.
And so one of my goals very early was to make sure I didn't have any of that kind of opposition. And I didn't come with a lot of that baggage. I certainly had some disagreements with folks over the years, but I didn't have that deep-seated, baggage with folks. And so my goal was to lock my community in from the beginning, because I didn't want to, deal with that or a part of the Latino community supporting an opponent or anything like that. And so I was able to do it, was able to bring everyone on board, and didn't have any folks
going against that grain, right?
Like that,
yeah, and I would imagine even because the last one, the predecessor was Bobby Hernandez, right, which was 30 years ago.
Was Michael Hernandez.
Michael Hernandez?
Yeah, in so he got into a little bit of trouble and left in 1994. But before him was Bobby.
Oh, right.
Bobby was right before him. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. But I think Bobby had your back with it. He's still around, right? He's still around, involved with a lot of things. So
yeah. Bobby was a big supporter, and
he held it for a long time, man. He did. He did a long time.
Yeah, I think he.
I think 4 terms. I think he did 4 terms. He ended in 91. Yeah.
And but he's still a big supporter. I talk to him frequently, and
I bet.
And there's he just has a lot of wisdom.
Yeah, well, holding that title for that length of time, man, he's seen a lot too.
I remember, Crispin. I remember when you first told me you were running for council. We were at a Chiefs tailgate.
I was going to say, you got to say where we were.
Yeah, I was like, we were at a Chiefs tailgate, man. I remember, and it was a good time, and we were talking about a lot, catching up. And I remember I told you then, and I'm telling you now. And I told you when you had your event at Matty Rhodes, I said, hey, man, I know I'm on the Kansas side, but I'm rooting for you, man, because you represent me. You represent us, no matter where, doesn't matter. You're on the Missouri side, KCMO. The work you're doing is so important for the Latino community. And to that point, man, we're sitting here right now in KC Hispanic News offices, right? So shout out Joe Arce for making that happen.
Yeah.
Let's switch it up a little bit, man. So let's talk about Kansas City specifically. My question for you, Crispin, did you personally ask for a Ferris wheel to be in your backyard?
No, but I'll say I am a big fan of that project.
Yeah,
it looks good, man. It looks good at night.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very cool place to take the family when all is said and done. I pretty early on I met with the developers on that project because I'd heard some folks on the west side were not happy, kind of over in the Sacred Heart area and near there, and I wanted to see what it was all about, and there were concerns about parking and traffic, and I after learning more about it and being down there a couple of times, I really don't see a downside. They're going to have plenty of parking, and I've had a chance to ride the Ferris wheel. They're going to do in the spring, and then I think there's another phase within the year. They're going to open up a whole kind of beer hall, food court.
Yeah, that's what
there.
I thought. I thought they're going to do something like that there.
And then they're going to have this whole display called Neon Alley or something like that, where they've acquired all these old neon signs from around town. So, the stuff that our parents will look back nostalgically and say, oh, I remember that sign from, whatever corner.
The old Grand Emporium, man.
Yeah, exactly. And so
nobody remembers that. Yeah.
All these really cool old signs that they've repurposed, they're going to hang them up down there, and they're going to be closing by I think 11 or midnight, so that it's family friendly and not just a bar district. And my message to them was you are in the West Side. There are folks that are going to be nervous about the development. And so, bring them in and have, West Side night and have, showings for the Chiefs games and make sure you're part of the community, you're embracing the community, because, I think what a lot of folks are concerned about is it's just going to be people driving in from Johnson County and then driving back out. And so,
sure.
I said, build relationships with the businesses and include the businesses. And they were very, very receptive to that. And I had a second meeting with them where I took a couple folks down there with the Hispanic Chamber, because I wanted them to continue to build relationships, since they're going to have, food and other tenants down there. And so I think they're working some things out, and it might, hopefully feel more familiar to the community than they think. But, we got to ride the wheel when it opened up. Really good views. Yeah. There's a mini golf course down there. And so, I want to keep working with the developers there, and I'll be happy to host events there myself and invite the community in, because, they can embrace the community and they can be part of the community. And I think that's all that folks really want.
I think so too, man. I think so too. You're the councilman for District 4,
right?
Yeah.
Right, man. That's a wide area, man. I looked at that, and you go from everywhere from here on the west side to northeast side. Some of the Plaza area, a little bit over on the north side.
Hop over North Kansas City.
Yeah, man. That's you go all over the place, man. Where you're a spokesman for, or take care of all them. What kind of challenges, man? There's any challenges that you come with all that?
Maybe
man?
one, maybe two.
Maybe one or two, anything that, even more importantly, I know that you will obviously going to overcome all that, but just having to build that, then some of those people might call them problematic areas, and since we talked about some of the public safety, some of those areas, man, what do you think is probably a good thing to do to let these people know that that's going to be better for them?
Yeah. It is a very unique district. In the middle of it all, you have downtown. And so you have all the business and development interests, all the folks, we want to build a stadium downtown is what we're talking about. So, all the most powerful interests concentrated in downtown. It's right in the heart of my district. And you go south, and then you're getting into Midtown, classic Midtown neighborhoods like Coleman Highlands and Valentine and Volker and Hyde Park. And, these are folks who are middle class families and want to live in the city, so they are very involved and have strong opinions about what things should happen in their neighborhoods. And you go further south all the way down to the Nelson part of my district. Of course, Crossroads West Side around the downtown area. You snake over, and I've got about half of Independence Avenue, and so Indian Mound and Sheffield, and then the neighborhood I grew up, a big chunk of it, my dad's house, the house I grew up in, is actually now in the 4th district. It's never been up until August.
Is
Always
that when
been
they
in the 3rd
redrew
district.
the maps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's right across the street is 3rd district, and then he's on the 4th district side.
They were like, okay, where's Crispin's dad's house? Right
Where did he grow up at?
Draw the line right there.
This is his.
I'm excited that that's the case, and I'll tell you more about that in a sec. But and then you go north of the river, and it includes Briarcliff. And some of the older neighborhoods,
a whole different group of people,
all the way up to Choteau and Sherwood Estates, and all the way up to Gladstone, basically. But the interesting thing about the Northland, that part that's in the 3rd district, is, those neighborhoods have a lot more in common with neighborhoods in the Northeast and in Midtown than they do with neighborhoods way up north, by Berry Road.
Right.
Really?
A lot of these neighborhoods are, post World War II. Ranch-style housing, aging infrastructure.
Right.
And so these are neighborhoods that, aren't on the brink, but are aging quite a bit. And, the diversity in that area is actually not what you would expect. There are more languages spoken at North Kansas City High School than there are at Northeast High School.
Wow.
And there are a lot of Latinos that live up in those neighborhoods, too. And so... that area has a lot more in common with other areas of the 4th district. And so, the neighborhood that, I grew up in, that my dad still lives in, is, I had a realization at one point that, if elected, going to be in a better position than anyone had ever been in to try and do some transformative things in that community, the community that made me.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Until they drew the lines, I didn't know that was going to be the case, but it took on, kind of made the election take on a different meaning for me.
Right.
So I'm really excited about that. And I think the way to overcome is to be present. I the person that was elected before me in my position wasn't really active, and folks in that part of the Northland were upset that they never got any attention. They never got it. There was no outreach, no anything.
That'll make them mad, man.
So the bare minimum has just been going to the meetings, and that's earned me a lot of goodwill. But we've done some really good things for those neighborhoods up there, and we're getting a lot of money to put into those neighborhoods. I mean, some of them are still very rural and have no sidewalks, no infrastructure, and I got a whole story about that, but we went up there and they need some attention.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that, man. Like, is there a project that you can share you're working on that's coming up, that the city would be excited about, that maybe people aren't fully aware of, it's happening and maybe it's public, but you know how that goes, man. Not a lot of people pay attention to something until it's actually getting built, right?
So one thing that I've been working on a lot is we don't have a municipal jail right now. We send folks out to Vernon and Johnson counties, and these are folks who commit municipal ordinance violations. So we're not talking murderers or rapists or high level felonies.
Grass hasn't been cut.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
These are folks that are stealing catalytic converters, breaking into cars, committing property damages, low level assaults.
Just a city jail.
The quality of life issues that a lot of neighborhood folks the neighborhood gets hit 2 or 3 times in a month and everyone's cars get broken into. Nobody wants to deal with that. And so we don't have a municipal jail. Prior to the setup with the Vernon and Johnson counties, we contracted with Jackson County, and then Jackson County went to go build their own jail. So I'm actually chairing the city council committee that is working to make recommendations on where to build it, how big it's going to be, how we're going to pay for it. And so at some point, I think that'll require us to come to the voters, probably in August, with a renewal for the public safety sales tax to build a new facility. We're going to have a very robust focus on mental health, because a lot of these are folks who are struggling with mental health issues or substance abuse issues. So
it's a big deal.
That's something we've been working very hard on.
That's excellent, man. We had a guest, Drew Eanes, man. Shout out Drew. And he talked about mental health in his episode. He talked about the importance of his mental health and just mental health in general. And that's one of the things I'm sure you're well aware of, Crispin, growing up, our fathers, our grandparents, so on, uncles, aunts, we didn't talk about that stuff, man, particularly in Latino communities, right? And it's just like, we ain't talking about that.
Deal with it.
You just deal with it.
Yeah.
One of the things that we firmly believe here on Enterrupt KC, Crispin, is that Kansas City has really started to prosper and grow as kind of more of a one KC. You kind of were talking about it earlier, that those thick boundaries, right, between community to community or county to county or even state to state, right? Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, and then the surrounding communities. What do you feel like, man? I mean, do you feel like Kansas City is really starting to come into one big metropolitan and starting to really think that way? I mean, I know that's can be kind of tough as a councilman for a specific city, but how do you view that?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of cohesion right now. I think we probably more than ever have taken on a shared identity, and I think a lot of that has to do with the Chiefs and Royals being successful over the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
Those types of things, those celebrations when you have Super Bowl parades and everyone's glued around the TV, and then setting off fireworks after the game. And,
happened last week.
Those types of things just make it easier to set aside differences, whether it's political or you live in one part of the town or, another. And so, we got big things coming like the World Cup and the draft was a big deal. I think those are the types of things that help people feel that shared identity.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and then, you talked about FIFA and Copa America. And, I mean, look, shout out Sporting KC. Shout out, KC Current, you know what I mean? Because those two major soccer clubs. And then, let's not forget about Kansas City, Kansas' own, the KC Monarchs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, they're over there winning championships.
They're winning championships too, man.
And, I feel like the city, I know because people, listen, man, I'm a huge Royals fan. And I know Royals are a hot topic right now. But they're over there just kicking the shit out of everybody over there on the Kansas side, winning championships. And it's like, man, let's go over there and support them, Like, it's okay. The Royals, we can support both teams, you know what I mean? So, hometown pride, man. And, we talked about a little bit, the downtown stadium. What's your thoughts on that, man?
That's in your district, right?
Yeah, well, it would be if we get there.
Are you like no more headaches? No more headaches.
No, I think it's an intriguing, exciting opportunity. I mean, what we're talking about is the next 40, 50 years of the organization. Could you renovate and do some upgrades, at the K and keep it out there? Yeah, you could do that in 10 years and then do it in another 10 years and then do it in another 10 years and spend, $100 million doing that. But, I got a lot of nostalgia wrapped up in that stadium. I grew up going to games out there.
I think it's a great stadium, man. Yeah. But, I mean, I feel it both ways, right? Like I'm opinionated, man. Like, I love it out there. Great parking. It's out, driving on 70, man, you see it, Then back-to-back, Arrowhead and Kauffman Stadium right there, man. It's awesome. But also, my opinion, also downtown, man, it'll help all them businesses there, man. Yeah. That'll help everything, So it's a, I don't know, man. It's a catch-22, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, elected or not, would be more likely to go to a game downtown than I would out of Kauffman. I mean, it's great to go out there, but I mean, it's a hustle. I mean, the drive. If I'm going to go out after work, I'm going to have to leave work early, and whereas if it was downtown, I would go to more games out of the year. I think it would be.
So you sounds like you would be for a downtown stadium.
Oh yeah. I am for a downtown stadium. I think. It can be transformative, and Kauffman's great. Like I said, I got a lot of nostalgia wrapped. I mean, I've been to World Series games there and playoff games there this last go around, and lived through all the really tough years. Cop baseballs there, and have a lot of very special memories. But the idea of taking my baby boy to a game downtown and hopping on the streetcar to do it or just doing it on a regular basis. It seems like a very cool experience than, driving all the way out.
You might be able to walk to it, you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Depending on where it is.
Well, fan is a fan, man. Fans are going to go wherever it goes. I mean, I get it, with taxes.
Yeah, and I've said this before, man. I personally feel like, Crispin, it is a downtown stadium is the next step for our professional sports franchises, for the Royals specifically, in the maturation of KC as a whole. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
you've traveled, man. You go to these big cities. Look, man, the stadium's downtown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right in the heart, man.
And that's the thing. I mean, baseball is supposed to be an urban game, an urban sport, I mean, you look at the history of the sport, it's always been the case. And, moving it downtown will I think provide better access to kids in the inner city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely, man, absolutely. So, did you know that Kansas City is on the New York Times and Wall Street Journal's top places to visit in 2024?
I saw the Times, yeah.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal put us on top 10.
Yeah,
man. I mean, and then you look at some of the other places they compared us to, like Malaysia. Places in Japan, in Mexico. And I mean, it's just like Kansas City is a hot place, man, is a hot place. What do you feel like? I mean, I know you said that the sports teams and things like that, but there's so much more to this city than just the sports. I know, listen, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, they're doing wonders for the city, bringing all this attention here. Andy Reid, the Chiefs right now. But what is it that you think makes Kansas City so unique?
I think it's we've always kind of had that in us because of our culture, being a Midwestern city. We're welcoming, we're hardworking. and we have a very deep sense of civic pride. Think of all the years when the Chiefs were struggling and the Royals weren't any good, and we everyone still loved them and continued to go out to the stadiums. I think in 30, 40 years, when we look back at this time, we'll see a renaissance that began in 2012 with the All-Star game and everything that happened after that, because 14, 15,
you're right,
Royals make it, well, in 13 finish dang near close to make the playoffs, make the playoffs in 14, make the World Series, and then win the World Series in 15, and then the Chiefs kind of take over from there, and that kind of coincides with so much that is also happening in the city with World Cup and building the current stadium, and we by being a soccer capital, we hitched our ride to the future, and we've always kind of, for the last 10 or 15 years, we played that role with Sporting's revitalization and building the park out there, and just the every step of the way. Excuse me, we have embraced the sport and have been a location for it, and now taking that to the next level with the current stadium and the World Cup and Copa and all that stuff. I mean, we hitched ourselves to the right asteroid there, and so I think that's all just kind of coming together at a really cool time. And you have city leaders that are wanting to continue that progress and have big events like the draft, and there's going to be some other things opening up in the next year that are going to continue to just put us on the map. One of those is this Rock Island Bridge project, the bridge over there behind Kemper, that's going to open in April, I think, and so you're going to have this old rail bridge that's been turned into real estate, and it's going to have restaurants and bars and public space for performances.
That's going to be real nice, man.
Yeah, well, and the thing is I don't know if y'all have ever been to Florence, Italy, but there's the Ponte Vecchio, which is 500-year-old bridge that has restaurants and shops all along it. It's very, very unique, and the only thing like it in the world. And we've kind of taken a modern approach to that. I mean, this is going to revolutionize how cities repurpose these old bridges, and there's not going to be anything like this in the United States. And so, when we're on Monday Night Football and they're out getting shots of Union Station and all the landmarks, this is going to be one of them. It's going to be a big deal.
Nice.
And then, the current stadium opening up in the spring. So there's just all this momentum that keeps moving forward. And, I think it's easy to see 2026 with the World Cup as not just the horizon, but a peak.
Yeah.
But
one of the stepping stones, man.
But we've got to treat it like another launch pad, because we're going to be on a stage like we've never been before, and we can't just sit back and be satisfied with it. We got to figure out how to take it to the next level.
So are you a soccer fan?
I am. I never played, and I'm not as big as the Chiefs fan, or follow it as closely, but I pay attention.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was curious about that, man, because I didn't learn to appreciate soccer till about, I don't know, I feel like 5 or 10 years ago, right, when Sporting KC kind of won their championship, and I was like, man, look how crazy the city is going. And then it's just like one of those things where it just keeps going. The momentum keeps going. Then Kansas City's the soccer capital of the world, and eventually you're like, hey, I'm a soccer fan. Now I will say this, Crispin. The one thing I don't understand. Why do the games end in ties, man? That is my biggest frustration.
That's weird,
I think that's a very American thing.
It is.
know why.
It is.
Stuff.
It
How
is.
is that?
I don't know, man. And I think because I'm just so competitive, I'm like, somebody has to win. Somebody has to score.
Somebody got to kick that ball in there, man.
This game better not end 0-0.
Yeah.
And then they end in 0-0, and I'm like,
a lot of them do. I just barely went to my first sporting game, man. Last year.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah.
So where do you see the city, Crispin, in 10 years, 20 years? Where do you see the city? I mean, you talked about the FIFA World Cup being a launch pad, and kind of these peaks coming. Where do you see the city? Because you're going to be around in 10 years, brother.
Yeah. I think we gotta figure out what things look like after, what we want things to look like after 2026. I think we leverage the attention and the exposure into, international relationships, business opportunities and development opportunities, sister city opportunities. I think we continue to chase, if we can prove that we can put on that big of an event, we continue to chase big events.
Yeah.
And things that continue to put the city on the map. My hope is that this just continues to snowball, and what we see is people not only wanting to visit here, but wanting to live here and raise a family here. And this then you're getting beyond the superficial stuff and events like sporting events. Then you're talking about, what are we really offering people to make that decision between quality education and public safety and, a homicide rate that's not breaking records.
Right.
And so, we've got to get those things under control so that when folks do come here, we've got a good shot at them, at keeping them. I mean, my dream would be, as we're doing all these things, people are moving to Kansas City, we're expanding the tax base, we're increasing density, we're becoming a bigger city with more people and more interest and more ideas and more diversity. And so, I think there's a lot to be said for the unearned media that we get every Monday night when the Chiefs play, and landmarks, our beautiful landmarks are shown on the TV. Or, there was, the Today Show just this last week did a whole segment on all four divisional round teams. And Kansas City, again, is just on national TV. And so, we don't have mountains, we don't have a beach or oceans, and that puts us at a competitive disadvantage. But, my dream would be we're leveraging all these things, all this free media, all this free advertising into not just tourism, but people actually deciding to live here.
That's true, man. I guess that's one of the things I hadn't really thought about is all that free marketing that the city's getting, right? Every time Kansas City's on TV, and, we all know the Chiefs, winning the Super Bowl this year. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. We're just going to continue to get more and more marketing, free marketing, to your point, right? So, Crispin, you talked about your schedule, man. You talked about work-life balance. You talked about all these things that you got going on, the pots that your hand is in and your time is in. We're curious, man. What do you do to get away?
You travel?
Yeah.
Like your downtime?
Yeah, we my wife and I, we were traveling quite a bit before the election and before the baby, because she had the baby like 2 weeks before the primary election, and so we weren't doing a lot of traveling, but we did a lot of traveling before then, and we've done some since then, but trying to pick it back up. So we're going to be we're going to go to St. Croix here in February, and then then we're going to be in D.C. and we've got some trips from the pandemic years to get rescheduled that we had to cancel. So
some fun places to go to.
Yeah. So definitely traveling. Honestly, what really helps me kind of chill out is just watching fights on a Saturday night, just popping my popcorn and sitting there and watching fights on Saturday night.
You like UFC as well? You watch that too?
No,
not too much. You just boxing UFC, matches, right?
You like the technique and strategy?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a sport with history and culture, and as Latinos, we have deep ties to that culture.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't really feel that with UFC.
Yeah.
Who's that next up-and-coming boxer you're watching?
Boots Ennis, Duran Ennis, the welterweight, that's probably going to take over at 147 pounds.
Okay.
Teofimo Lopez is still, going to do his thing. We go from lightweight, probably move up to welterweight. One fighter who's really interesting and just hasn't gotten his due is Alexander Usyk, the heavyweight champion. Holds 3 of the belts. And, really cool thing about his story is, he picked up, 3 of the belts from Anthony Joshua, and then had a rematch rescheduled for tens of millions of dollars, and then the war in Ukraine pops off because he's Ukrainian.
Right.
And instead of going forward with the fight and having these tens of millions of dollars on the table, he backs out and he goes back to Ukraine to join the militia.
He goes back to fight. Yeah.
And Vasily Lomachenko also did the same thing. I mean, they gave up all this money to go back to their country and fight. And, you know, it was amazing that he did that. He took a year off, and then he came back and went and got that fight and got all the money and won, you know, kept his belts. And, you know, he's got a big fight coming up here in March with Tyson Fury. But, I mean, you know, that guy, I mean, that's legendary stuff.
Yeah, he's a beast,
you know, that's really cool. So, you know, I'm a big Alexander Usyk fan.
Who was the first fighter you remember that really caught your attention? Like, who was that fighter?
When I was a kid, probably, you know, Roberto Duran and Julio Cesar Chavez. You know, he was kind of in the twilight of his career. Roberto Duran kind of made a comeback, but he was already kind of an older fighter. But I remember those fights when I was a kid.
Have you seen the documentary on Amazon about Roberto Duran?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's
really
incredible.
Well, I think even his record is 103-16.
Yeah, you know, like Julio Cesar Chavez is 140 wins or something like that. But I mean, crazy. A lot of those.
That's what they say.
You know, a lot of those guys are.
Guy followed him out the bar. He just knocked him out.
Yeah. There's not. You know, you get out of the top 20. There's a lot of those guys aren't really, you know, good fights, but
counted fights. Right?
Hey, the one thing I've learned about you, man, and I don't know if this is a great escape for you, man, is you are a stogie guy.
Yeah.
You are a stogie guy. Yeah. You're a cigar guy. I'm curious, man. Like, when did that happen? When did you realize, like, man, you know what?
Was there somebody that, you know,
cigar,
like for me, I love cigars as well.
I love cigar too. I don't do them as often, but I love cigars.
I have a humidor. I actually got 3 of them.
Yeah.
But let me do this, man. I'm going to give you the best, because I brought a couple. I'm going to just give you the best one I got right now.
I appreciate it.
But when...
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
When did that happen for you? When you grew up, you were like, I'm grown now. I'm a cigar guy.
Yeah, I remember our grandpa always smoking cigars. He used to get these cheap, nasty cigars called Ozark Crooks.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a box of them for like $10, and they were really hard.
Them headache smoking, man. Yeah,
they were. But you know, my dad smoked cigars, and so I don't know. I think I just picked it up. I try not to, you know, I probably only smoke, you know, once or twice a week in the spring and in the summertime. Sure. It's too cold to be outside.
And, right.
Well, the next time I smoke a cigar, I want to smoke it with you. So call me up, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you go anywhere? Because, man, you know, that is the one thing I've noticed about the city, man. Cigar lounges or just cigar spots. They've popped up, man.
Yeah.
In your district?
Go anywhere?
You know, not really since the pandemic. You know, I went to Fidel's a lot in Westport.
Yeah.
That was usually the go-to spot. But other than that, usually just sit on the porch or something.
There's
like
this
that.
place, man, in North Kansas City, man, that I've been to, man. Yeah. Shout out to Outlaws, man. Outlaws, man. It's a bar, lounge. They got leather recliners. They got TVs all over the place.
Yeah. Outlaws,
man.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's pretty dope, man.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah. So you mentioned books, brother. You said, man, I was up in my room. I just read books and watched some sports. What books you reading, man?
So right now I'm reading what's it called? Zoning in the USA. So it's about zoning.
I'm gonna look it up. Don't worry. Zoning. Okay.
Yeah, about you know. So you're talking about inclusionary zoning, exclusionary zoning, and the housing market, and you know how cities use the zoning codes,
like planning.
Zoning, like the zoning codes. You know, the laws about, you know, what you can build on land and where you can build it and how you can build it. And, you know, that's a big topic.
Oh, man, huge.
You know, how cities develop and how zoning, you know, has been one of those tools used to kind of create the you know, the way the American city exists now, or the sprawl, the lack of density, the segregation and all those things. And so that's what I'm reading right now.
What about that playlist, man? What's that playlist sound like?
What kind of music, man?
You're from the East Side, brother. You ain't fooling nobody, man.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to everything.
Got a wide variety, right?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on, you know, a lot of underground, you know, West Coast rap, of course. And
well,
like
when you
like
when
MC
you,
Breed,
well
like
when
who?
you was wearing your Dickies and all that,
Yeah,
man.
man.
I mean, come on, that
know,
express it
man.
right
You
there,
gave
man.
yourself out, man.
That already expressed it right there.
yeah. So you
Was there a song you were listening to on your way up here? Like what is that, man?
No, I had it on sports radio this morning.
Yeah.
That's all it's been on all week for
Yeah,
the
me
Chiefs
too.
game.
Yeah, me too.
But no, I listened to a little bit of everything. Definitely grew up on kind of West Coast hip hop, underground rap, and which I think a lot of kids from Kansas City did. And I actually listened to a lot of East Coast rap too, though. We watched a lot of BET and all the video shows that used to be on back in the day, and so you got pretty good exposure to both coasts. My mom and dad were always listening to Motown and oldies, so definitely grew up with a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I listen. I keep up pretty good with changes in hip hop, and I feel like folks our age, kind of have a hard time letting go of the music from the 90s and early 2000s, and
I
don't
think
want
that's
to
all
listen to
generational, man. Everybody does that, I think,
Yeah. I had to tell you, man, I saw a photo of you, and it made me jealous.
Was he in Dickies?
No. I don't know if I ever wore Dickies. I don't know. I don't know if I ever wore Dickies. I want that gangster, Crispin. You were a gangster.
Well, that's what I said. Was the picture you seen of him? Was he in?
No. It was actually.
I want to see one of those
It was actually
pictures,
with a rapper, a hip hop artist, Tech Nine, Kansas City's own Tech Nine.
Oh yeah. That was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you were with him, and so you a Tech Nine fan?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to be from Kansas City and not, and especially all the kids out in Independence when I was in high school, all listened to Tech Nine. But so that was cool. So the East High School soccer team won a 3A state championship this year, and there was a team of immigrant and refugee kids, all African, Hispanic kids, and they went to the championship last year and lost on penalty kicks, and they came back this year and won it. And so we had them at City Hall to celebrate them and everything they had done. And there was Tech Nine was at City Hall for a separate thing, and we realized they were going to be there at the same time. So we were like, we got to get the kids in with pictures with him and everything. And so he was really cool about it, and it worked out really well. I feel like I've always kind of had a connection there. So a couple of my cousins on the west side were really involved with some of his early stuff, and they used to have the van they would drive around with the strange music stuff all on it, and so always been a big Tech Nine fan. He does such a good job of representing Kansas City.
Dude's a Kansas City, he's the poster child of Kansas City in my mind, man, because before Patrick Mahomes, all these people who are representing Kansas City today, Tech Nine was doing this 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, he said it, man.
He was the one verbalizing it.
Yeah, he was verbalizing it everywhere.
So one of the questions we ask people, particularly in your age group generation, man, tell us you're from KC without telling us you're from KC.
Ooh, I have to think about that. I'm gonna give something good.
Man. Think about your district. Or something,
yeah. Let's see. You think of easy things like Town Topic or something like that, or Rosedale's Barbecue. Let's see.
Don't say potholes on the street, brother. Don't say that, man. Do yourself
man,
some
look,
justice,
I've been hitting
man.
them things last 2 days, man. Tough, man.
We got our work cut out for us on that. I'm trying to go back to something good in my childhood.
Man.
Thinking back to Spirit Fest or something like that back in the day when
there
we used
go.
to have Spirit Fest.
Those are good times. You ever go to those?
Oh, I remember going as a kid. Yeah.
What about what is it? Over in Independence, Caligon Days or
Santa Caligon Days? Oh yeah.
Shout out, man. You ever go to that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, when I was in high school.
You're gonna take your little boy to that. I promise you. You're gonna be taking your son to that.
Man, it's hot when it's there, man.
It is hot.
It's hot when you go, man. The last time I went, man, that was crazy.
Yeah,
man. It's too hot.
Cool, man. I appreciate that.
No, man. I wanted to touch on a couple things, man, that I read about you. That you do some community volunteering for Mattie Rhodes, right? You also do that. You're involved in something called Mothers in Charge.
Used to be. Yeah. Was on the board for both.
Oh, okay.
of them.
What is that? I've never even heard of that.
So Mothers in Charge is a organization. Basically, it was bunch of moms that came together after losing sons to gun violence, and they'll come together whenever there's a homicide and try and reach out to the mom in that situation and the family. And part of it is they want to de-escalate and don't want to try and prevent retaliation or other violence, but the other part is they just want to be there for the families and be there for the moms because they've all been through it too. And so there's a bunch of services they provide along with that. And they got started back in probably 2015, 2014 as a local chapter. It's a national organization. And so I was on the board for a couple years during that time.
Nice.
That's good, man.
Nice, man.
That's good. That's good. Also, I don't know, man. One thing we do here, man, at Enterrupt KC, man, of course, our logo, people, places, and things, man.
Yes, sir.
What type of other things would you say, or places, man, that you say you gave a lot, you know a lot already, and you're involved in many, many, many things. So, I mean, you can go either people, places, or things. Anybody you want to give a shout out to and what they're doing here?
Yeah, that represent Kansas City.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you guys and everything you're doing here. It's always good to give a voice to the community. Man, there's a lot of people out there doing really good work and doing great things.
For sure.
That's one cool thing about being in City Hall is you really see not just, city employees and staff people, working their butts off, but folks that are doing great things. I mean, I'll give a shout out to the snow crews that we had these last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's not easy work. It's tough. We're used to, having some challenges with getting the snow and ice off the ground, but I think these last couple of years we've done a really good job. And I went down the first snow to take them some hot chocolate and some pan dulce, and the shift change was like at 6 p.m. so I was able to catch the folks that were getting ready to hop in the plows and go out and be at the command center, and they did a really good job this time around. And so city staff for sure. That kind of weather makes it tough for the folks we have on the back of the trash trucks and doing that kind of work, and dangerous. And so there were some of those days it was just too unsafe to put them out there. But once it got a little warmer, they were able to get back out and start picking up all that trash and doing that stuff. So our city staff have been doing a great job.
Big shout out to them, man. Big shout out to them. Yeah, another thing I wanted to say, or ask you rather, was, there's a lot of people, we're talking about how people come here and how our city's growing, and how trying to have, for the growth of everything, and how people are asking also, if they want to know a place to come to or where to go at, specifically like restaurant wise,
for a weekend or something.
If they come, you travel a lot. So if a lot of people are coming and traveling, they'd be like, "Hey, Crispin, where can I go to eat? We're a barbecue, man. We're famous for our barbecue, right?"
Yeah, you going to eat barbecue after this? Yeah, man. Where are you sending them?
Yeah,
man?
you talked about that earlier, man. When we first started, if somebody asked you that, man, where would you tell them, go to? What's your favorite place?
Barbecue wise, so we're going to go with my family to Hog Jaw in North Kansas City.
Okay.
Which you haven't tried it out. It's very good, very good. Owned by a firefighter, so hardworking folks.
Yeah.
My favorite barbecue in the city, and I feel like folks are sometimes hesitant to pick a side, but I'm not. I mean, LC's is my favorite.
LC's, yeah.
But I mean, there's not a barbecue place in town that I don't like or won't go to. I mean, I love Bryant's, I love Gates, Jack Stack when you're feeling fancy.
That's where you have your business meetings. Crispin, I'm going to take you to lunch. Where are we going? Jack Stack.
Yeah. But no, LC's is my favorite.
Yeah, good, man. I am too, and I've said it before, man. I'll keep on saying it, man. To me, man, my opinion is on barbecue, like I get something different from every single place. I think each one touches on something different, which for me, what I like. Like, I'll get a double beef somewhere and get the rib somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Rosedale's earlier, and I tell people this, man. I know barbecue, it's a big deal in this city. We know that, right? But everybody has their own little specific places for one thing or two things.
Yeah, they do.
I love Rosedale's chicken. Their chicken dinner.
Chicken?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I love their chicken, man.
I don't think I've ever had their chicken.
Hey, brother. I'll take you right after this. We'll go eat chicken dinner at Rosedale's. I'm serious, man. Their chicken dinner is really good. So shout out Rosedale's, man.
Yeah, it's okay, man. Rosedale's pretty good. I like it. I think I went there just 2 weeks ago, man.
Yeah. Crispin, one of the last questions we have for you, brother, is, when we were starting this podcast, we were asking a lot of youth, man, what is one thing you want to hear, people talk about? These are people in the community doing great work. What is it you want to hear them say and talk about for you that you'd be interested in? And a lot of the feedback we got was the pressure of having to know exactly what we want to do right after high school, and I think we can all relate to that, right? What advice would you have, man, for those youth, that age group, that high school age group or younger, that pressure, and what advice would you give to them about knowing exactly what they want to do?
Yeah, I think, a healthy focus is progress, not perfection. I think that requires you to realize it's a long game. It's a long game, and it's a long road, and you build to a goal, and there's trial and error. There's a good balance of direction, but flexibility. Because I think of what I'm doing with my life compared to what I was right out of high school, and it's very different.
There you go.
And some of us figure it out in our late 20s, some in our 30s. Some go through a career and then transition into another career and find success in a second career. I mean, it's a long game, and so I think we should keep pressure on ourselves, but in the context of this is a long road and things change and you adapt and you're flexible, and if the goal is always to just make progress and not shoot for perfection, I think you eventually get there.
Well said, man. Well said.
That's excellent, man. Excellent advice, brother. Progress, not perfection.
Right.
Love that, man. Well, listen, Crispin, it's been an
great,
amazing
man.
time with you on our podcast, Enterrupt KC, People, Places, and Things. Thank you for all the work you do, man, in the community. Thank you for representing us as Latinos, man, there at City Hall and in the community here in Kansas City, in your district. I look forward to seeing, I know D-Rod looks forward to seeing all the progress you're going to make over the next, 4 years? Is it a 4-year commitment?
4-year term,
Yeah. I look forward to seeing, man, all the
Yeah,
progress you're going to
man,
make.
for sure. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in here and talking to us,
absolutely.
man.
And to go back to your earlier question, how to let you know I'm from Kansas City without saying
there we
You
go.
got it, man.
It's been in his head. I knew he was spinning in there.
I could probably make a very, very long list of places both in Kansas City and outside of Kansas City where I hear the national anthem, and it's always home of the Chiefs.
Home of
There
the
you go,
Chiefs, baby.
man.
Home
That's
of
a
the
good
Chiefs.
one, man. That's a good one.
That is a Kansas City thing, man. That's right.
On. What a good way to end it, man.
Yeah, that's a great way. Thank you, brother. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Enterrupt KC.
Enterrupt
I'm
KC.
JL. This is D-Rod. People,
Yes,
Places,
sir.
and Things. Subscribe, like, follow.
Can't
Next
wait.
time.
Next time. Bye.